Hello and welcome to another episode of our English podcast. I am Mark, and today we have a fascinating topic that many learners find quite challenging.
Hi everyone, I am Sarah. Yes, today we are talking about a very British dilemma. How to complain in English without sounding rude or aggressive. It is a fine line to walk, is it not?
Absolutely. Actually, before we dive into the deep end, do you have a quiz question for us today, Sarah?
I certainly do. We all know the British have a reputation for being overly polite. According to a recent cultural survey, what percentage of British people would rather suffer in silence than send cold food back in a restaurant? Is it A, 25%, B, 50%, or C, over 70%?
Well, that is quite a tricky one. I know we tend to bite our tongues, so I will guess C, over 70%. But we will find out at the end of the show.
Spot on. We will look into the answer later. Now, Mark, let us talk about complaining. Why is it so difficult to bring up an issue in a second language?
Right. I think when you are learning English, you focus so much on getting the grammar correct that you might forget about tone. If you are too direct, it comes across as aggressive. For example, saying, "Your service is terrible," is simply too harsh.
Exactly. We prefer to use diplomatic language. Instead of pointing fingers, it is better to soften the blow. For instance, you could say, "I seem to be having a slight issue with my order." Notice the use of seem to and slight.
Yes, softening phrases are remarkable tools. I remember a situation where I had to complain about a faulty laptop. If I had shouted at the assistant, I would not have received a refund. I simply pointed out that the screen was not working as expected.
That is a great example of the passive voice, to avoid blaming someone directly. Saying, "The screen is not working as expected," is much more tactful than saying, "You sold me a broken laptop."
Indeed. And if you have a problem with a colleague at work, you do not want to beat around the bush forever, but you also want to nip it in the bud before it escalates.
Right. You might say, "Could we possibly have a quick chat to iron out a few details?" It sounds so much more constructive. You are inviting them to resolve the issue together.
Let us pause for a moment, Sarah. We just used some fantastic expressions there. Should we highlight them for our listeners?
Great idea, Mark. First, you use the idiom beat around the bush. This means to avoid getting to the main point of a conversation. For example, "Stop beating around the bush and tell me what the problem is."
Exactly. And then you mentioned iron out. This is a highly useful phrasal verb. To iron out a problem means to resolve it or settle small differences. Like, we need to iron out the bugs in the new software.
We also used the phrasal verb bring up, which simply means to introduce a topic into a conversation. For instance, "I did not want to bring up the delayed delivery, but I had to."
Excellent vocabulary. Getting back to our topic, it really is about framing your complaint as a request for help rather than a personal attack.
That is the golden rule. Well, we are almost out of time. Mark, earlier I asked what percentage of British people avoid complaining about cold food in a restaurant. You guessed over 70%.
Yes, I did. Was I right?
You were. A staggering 73% of Brits admitted they would just eat the cold food or pretend everything is fine. We really do hate making a fuss.
Fascinating. So, for our learners out there, remember to be polite but firm. Use those softening phrases, and do not be afraid to bring up your concerns politely.
Spot on. Thank you for listening, everyone. Keep practicing your diplomatic English, and we will catch you in the next episode.